The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air at Blue Creek Diner, a small restaurant tucked between bigger buildings in the heart of town. The morning rush had just ended, and Lily wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, catching her breath as she refilled salt shakers at the counter. She'd been on her feet since 5 that morning, but the real test would come with the lunch crowd in a few hours. "Order up," called Pete from the kitchen window, sliding 2 plates of steaming food onto the counter. Lily grabbed them with practiced ease, balancing them along her arm as she had done thousands of times before. 3 years at Blue Creek had taught her how to carry 4 plates at once without dropping a single French fry. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it paid the bills and kept a roof over her head. And these days, that was enough. "Here you go," she said with a smile as she set the plates down for the elderly couple in booth 3. They were regulars, always tipped well and never complained about their food being too hot or too cold. "Thank you, dear," the woman said, squeezing Lily's hand. "You're looking tired today. Everything okay?" Lily's smile remained fixed in place. "Just the usual. My little brother had a fever last night, so not much sleep." "You're a good sister," the woman said, her eyes warm with understanding. "Don't forget to take care of yourself, too." Lily nodded and moved on to her next table. She didn't have time to explain that being a good sister meant dropping out of music school when her parents died, or that taking care of herself had become a distant memory, something she might get around to someday when life wasn't so demanding. The bell above the door jingled, and Lily glanced up to see a group of people enter the diner. They stood out immediately, designer clothes, perfect haircuts, and the easy confidence of people who never worried about making rent. Leading them was a tall man with bright eyes and an expensive watch that probably cost more than Lily made in 6 months. She knew who he was even before her boss rushed over to greet him personally. Alex Reed, tech genius and local success story. His face had been splashed across business magazines and local newspapers alike after he sold his app for millions last year. The gossip around town was that he had just launched something new, and it was even bigger than before. "Table for 6, please," he said to Lily's boss, who practically bowed as he led them to the largest booth in the corner. Great, Lily thought. Rich people who would run her ragged and leave a 5% tip because they'd never worked in service a day in their lives. "Lily, take table 9, her boss hissed as he passed her, his eyes wide with excitement. "And for God's sake, be extra nice." "I'm always nice," she muttered, but she grabbed her notepad and made her way to their table anyway. Bills didn't pay themselves, and her brother's medicine wasn't free. The group was laughing loudly as she approached, celebrating something with high fives and excited chatter. Lily waited patiently at the edge of the table, invisible until they needed something, just like always. "Excuse me," she finally said after standing there for nearly a minute. "Can I get you all started with some drinks?" 6 pairs of eyes turned to her, as if noticing her existence for the first time. 5 of them immediately returned to their conversation, but Alex Reed held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "Champagne," said a woman with red lips and perfectly manicured nails. "Your best bottle." "I'm sorry, we don't serve alcohol until afternoon. And we only have wine, not champagne," Lily explained, keeping her voice pleasant despite the woman's obvious disdain. "Then coffee for everyone," Alex Reed decided, sparing Lily the woman's response. "And whatever pastries you recommend." Lily nodded and turned away, already calculating how to fit serving this table between her other responsibilities. As she walked toward the coffee machine, she found herself humming softly, an old habit she couldn't seem to break. Music always came to her when she was stressed or tired, filling her mind with melodies that no one else could hear. Today it was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the last pieces she had mastered before leaving school. Her fingers twitched slightly at her sides, muscle memory making them reach for keys that weren't there. She returned with a tray of coffees and a basket of the diner's fresh-baked muffins, still humming absently as she set everything down. The group was celebrating louder now, toasting with coffee cups instead of champagne flutes. "Biggest launch in company history," one of the men was saying. "Alex, you're a genius." "Pure genius." "It was a team effort," Alex replied, but his smile showed he didn't really believe that. Everyone in this booth made it happen. As Lily leaned across the table to place the last coffee cup, she realized the conversation had stopped. She looked up to find Alex watching her with a curious expression. "That's Chopin, isn't it?" he asked. "The E-flat Nocturne?" Surprised, Lily nearly spilled the coffee. "Yes," she admitted, I didn't realize I was humming out loud. You weren't, he said, but your fingers were playing along at your side. I took piano lessons for 12 years. I'd recognize those finger patterns anywhere. The table had gone quiet, everyone looking between them with interest. Do you play? Asked the red-lipped woman, her tone suggesting she found the idea unlikely. Lily shook her head, the familiar ache of loss tightening her chest. Not anymore. She might have escaped then if the old keyboard in the corner hadn't caught Alex's eye. It had been there since before Lily started working at the diner, occasionally used by local musicians on Friday nights for a bit of extra atmosphere. So most of the time it just collected dust. Is that thing actually work? He asked, pointing to it. Lily's boss, hovering nearby and listening to every word, jumped in. It does, we have live music sometimes. Nothing fancy, but it works just fine. Alex's eyes lit up with sudden mischief. He turned to his friends. Hey, remember how we were just talking about my mother forcing me through all those piano lessons? He laughed and gestured toward the keyboard. 12 years and I can barely play chopsticks. One of his friends, a man with perfectly styled hair, scoffed. At least you tried. My parents spent a fortune on my violin lessons. Complete waste of money. Same with my singing lessons, added another woman. $10,000 down the drain. Lily felt something twist inside her as they laughed about opportunities she would have given anything to keep. She turned to leave, but Alex's voice stopped her. What about you? He called out. Since you know Chopin, I bet you could play something on that old keyboard. The question hung in the air. Lily could feel her boss's eyes burning into her back, silently begging her not to offend these important customers. I really should get back to work, she said, gesturing to her other tables. Come on. Alex pressed, his smile friendly but challenging. Just one song. I'll make it worth your while. His friends were watching now, amused by what they clearly thought would be an awkward moment for her. They expected her to embarrass herself to prove that she was exactly what they saw, just a waitress in a small-town diner. I don't think, Lily began, but her boss cut her off. Take 5 minutes, Lily, he said with forced cheerfulness. I'll cover your tables. Trapped, Lily looked at the keyboard across the room. It had been 3 years since she'd touched a piano. 3 years of letting her talent wither while she worked double shifts and cared for her brother. 3 years of pretending that music was just something she used to do, not something that still lived inside her, aching to get out. The diner had gone quiet. Other customers turning to watch the scene unfold. Lily could walk away, claim she was too busy, or simply refuse. But something in Alex's smug expression made her spine stiffen. He thought this was a joke, a way to entertain his friends at her expense. Fine, she said quietly. One song. She walked toward the keyboard, her heart pounding in her ears. Behind her, she heard someone at Alex's table snicker and another whisper, This should be good. Lily sat down on the bench, wiping a thin layer of dust from the keys with her apron. The keyboard wasn't anything special, just a basic electric model that had seen better days. But as her fingers hovered over the keys, something shifted inside her. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't just Lily the waitress, struggling to make ends meet. She was Lily the pianist again, the girl who had once brought an entire concert hall to tears with nothing but her hands and her heart. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes and began to play. The first notes floated through the diner like ghosts from Lily's past life. Her fingers remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The feel of the keys, the perfect pressure needed, the way music could speak when words failed. The old keyboard wasn't a concert grand piano, but in that moment it didn't matter. At first she played softly, almost hesitantly. 3 years of silence had left her rusty, and she could feel the stiffness in her hands. But as the music flowed through her, something awakened. Her body remembered. Her soul remembered. She had chosen Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece Alex had recognized from her humming. The gentle, dreamy opening notes filled the small diner, causing conversations to trail off mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. The cook stopped flipping burgers and leaned through the service window to watch. Behind her, Lily could sense the surprise from Alex and his friends, could almost picture their smug smiles fading. She didn't turn to look. She didn't need to. The music was carrying her somewhere else, back to a time when she had been someone different, someone with dreams bigger than surviving until next payday. As she reached the more technical section, her fingers danced across the keys with growing confidence. The cheap keyboard shouldn't have been able to produce such sounds, but Lily coaxed magic from it anyway. The music swelled and receded like waves on a shore, each note perfectly placed, perfectly timed. Her boss stood frozen by the counter, coffee pot still in hand, mouth slightly open. He had hired Lily 3 years ago and had never seen her as anything but a reliable waitress who didn't complain about double shifts. Now, watching her transform before his eyes, he felt like he was seeing her for the first time. At Alex's table, the red-lipped woman whispered, "Holy shit," breaking the spell for just a moment before being shushed by the others. Alex himself sat motionless, coffee forgotten in front of him, his eyes fixed on Lily's hands as they moved with impossible precision across the keyboard. An elderly man at another table removed his glasses and wiped his eyes. His wife reached across the table to squeeze his hand, understanding without words the memories this music brought back for him. The final notes of the nocturne faded into silence, but Lily didn't stop. Without pause, she flowed into Rachmaninoff's prelude in G minor, fierce, passionate, demanding. Her fingers flew across the keys at a speed that seemed almost inhuman, attacking the complex passages with a ferocity that made the old keyboard tremble beneath her hands. This wasn't the piece you played to prove you could handle a keyboard. This was the piece you played to show mastery, to demonstrate years of discipline and talent. This was Lily throwing down a gauntlet of her own. A small crowd had gathered around her now, waitresses on their break, customers who had wandered over from their tables, even people from the street who had heard the music through the open door and been drawn inside by curiosity. Sweat beaded on Lily's forehead as she poured herself into the music. She hadn't played in 3 years, and her fingers would pay for this tomorrow with soreness and stiffness. But in this moment, nothing mattered except the music. She had forgotten how it felt to let everything go. All the worry, all the struggle, all the endless, grinding work, and just exist inside the notes. When she finally brought the piece to its thunderous conclusion, the diner erupted in applause. Startled, Lily opened her eyes, reality crashing back around her. Her cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment as she saw all the people watching her, clapping, some even wiping away tears. For a moment she was frozen, caught between who she had been and who she was now. Then muscle memory took over again, not the memory of playing piano but of being a waitress. She stood quickly, smoothed her apron, and tried to step back into her normal life. "I should get back to work," she said to no one in particular, her voice barely audible over the continued applause. But as she turned to head back to her tables, she found Alex standing directly in her path. The smug smile was gone from his face, replaced by something that looked almost like awe. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, his voice quiet but intense. Lily hesitated, not wanting to share her past with this stranger who had tried to embarrass her just minutes ago. But something in his expression seemed genuine now, the arrogance replaced by real curiosity. "Eastman School of Music," she finally said. "I studied there for 3 years." The red-lipped woman had joined Alex now, her earlier disdain completely gone. "That's one of the top music schools in the country," she said. "What are you doing waiting tables in a place like this?" The question stung, even though Lily had asked herself the same thing countless times during long shifts with aching feet. "Life happened," she said simply. She didn't owe these people her story. "Now, if you'll excuse me." "Wait," Alex said, blocking her path again. "I'm sorry for putting you on the spot like that. I was being a jerk." Lily looked up at him, surprised by the apology. "Yes, you were," she agreed, which made him laugh unexpectedly. "Fair enough." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less like a millionaire tech mogul and more like a regular person. "Can I at least buy you a coffee to apologize? When you're off work, I mean." Lily studied his face, trying to figure out his angle. "Why?" "Because I've just heard someone play Rachmaninoff in a way that would make the composer himself weep. And I'd like to know more about how a person who can do that ended up here." He gestured around the diner. Before she could answer, her boss appeared at her side, his earlier irritation completely gone, replaced by a strange kind of deference Lily had never seen from him before. "Lily, why don't you take your break now?" he suggested, though it wasn't really a suggestion. "I'm sure Mr. Reed would appreciate hearing more about your talents." Lily wanted to refuse. She wanted to go back to being invisible, to the safety of a life where no one expected anything extraordinary from her. Playing those pieces had cracked something, open inside her, a door she had carefully sealed shut. 3 years ago when she packed away her dreams along with her sheet. Music, but looking at the faces around her. Her boss, practically bouncing with excitement at having a celebrity in his diner. The elderly couple watching her with something like pride. Even Alex's friends, their earlier condescension replaced by genuine interest. She knew it was too late to go back to being just a waitress. "Fine," she said, "but I only get 15 minutes. Her boss untied her apron for her, practically pushing her toward Alex's table. "Take all the time you need." Reluctantly, Lily followed Alex back to his booth, feeling strangely vulnerable without her apron and notepad, the armor she wore every day. As she slid into the booth, all eyes at the table focused on her with new interest. "So, Eastman," Alex said once they were settled, "that's impressive. Did you graduate?" Lily stared down at the coffee someone had placed in front of her. "No, I had to leave after my 3rd year. Why?" asked the man with the perfect hair, his tone genuinely curious now. "With that kind of talent, my parents died," Lily said flatly, cutting him off. The words still hurt to say out loud even after 3 years. "Car accident. I have a younger brother. He was 14 when it happened and there was no one else to take care of him." A heavy silence fell over the table. "I'm sorry," Alex said, and he sounded like he meant it. Lily shrugged. The gesture meant to look casual. Even though nothing about this conversation felt casual to her, it is what it is. The insurance money barely covered the funeral costs. "My brother had some health issues that needed ongoing care, so I came back home, got this job, and here we are." "But your music," the red-lipped woman began. "Doesn't pay the bills," Lily finished for her. "At least not reliably enough to keep a roof over our heads and medicine in the cabinet." She expected to see pity in their eyes, but instead found something closer to respect. These people, for all their money and success, recognized sacrifice when they saw it. "Your brother is lucky to have you," Alex said after a moment. Lily felt a small, genuine smile tug at her lips. He'd say he'd rather have his big sister than a world-famous pianist any day. "But I think that's just because he's a teenager who needs someone to buy him pizza and help with math homework." That broke the tension, and the group laughed. Not at her this time. "But with her, do you still play at all?" asked one of the women Lily hadn't heard speak before. "Besides today, I mean." Lily shook her head. "I don't even own a piano anymore. Had to sell it to cover the first month's rent on our apartment." The memory still ached. Watching strangers take away the instrument that had been the center of her world since she was 6 years old. "So today was the first time in 3 years?" Alex asked, his eyes wide with disbelief. That's unbelievable. Most concert pianists practice hours every day just to maintain their skill level." "Music isn't something you just forget," Lily said simply. "It becomes part of you." Alex nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. He opened his mouth to say something else, but was interrupted by Lily's boss rushing over to the table. "Lily," he said, his face flushed with excitement. "The video is going viral." "What video?" Lily asked, confusion replacing her momentary comfort. Her boss held up his phone. On the screen was a video of her playing, taken from across the diner. The view counter was climbing rapidly as she watched, already in the thousands. "Someone posted it online 10 minutes ago," her boss explained, practically bouncing on his heels. "People are sharing it like crazy. This is amazing publicity for the diner." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. Her private moment of reconnection with music, the thing she had kept buried for 3 years, was now entertainment. For strangers on the internet, Alex must have seen the panic in her eyes because he suddenly stood up. "I think that's enough excitement for one day," he said firmly, taking the phone from her boss's hand and giving it back to him. "Why don't you let Lily get back to work?" Her boss looked disappointed but nodded, hurrying back to the counter where customers were waiting. "Are you okay?" Alex asked, turning back to Lily. She wasn't, but she nodded anyway. "I should get back to my tables." As she stood to leave, Alex caught her eye. "This isn't over," he said, but not in a threatening way. "What you can do, it's too special to waste. We should talk more." Lily didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded and walked away, slipping her apron back on like armor. But as she returned to taking orders and refilling coffee cups, she could feel something had fundamentally changed. The music she had kept locked away had been set free, and she wasn't sure she could or should try to cage it again. The rest of Lily's shift passed in a blur. Customers who had witnessed her performance kept stopping her to ask questions or offer compliments. Some even requested selfies, as if she had suddenly become a local celebrity. Her boss beamed proudly whenever he caught her eye, as though he had personally discovered her talent rather than accidentally employed it for 3 years. Alex and his friends stayed much longer than they had originally planned. Lily noticed them huddled over their phones, talking in low, excited voices. Occasionally, one of them would glance up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It made her nervous. By the time she clocked out at 7 that evening, her feet ached and her head throbbed from the emotional whiplash of the day. All she wanted was to go home, check on her brother, and collapse into bed. Maybe tomorrow things would go back to normal, though a small voice inside her whispered that normal might never be the same again. As she stepped out the back door of the diner into the cool evening air, she was surprised to find Alex waiting for her, leaning against a sleek black car. "Before you say anything," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace when she stopped short. "I'm not stalking you. I just wanted to show you something." Lily crossed her arms over her chest. "I really need to get home to my brother." "It'll only take a minute," Alex promised, holding out his phone. "Please?" Against her better judgment, Lily stepped forward and took the phone. On the screen was the video of her playing, but this wasn't just any random social media post. This was on a major music blog with millions of followers. The view counter was now well over 100,000 and climbing rapidly. But what really caught her attention were the comments. "Who is this woman? She plays with more soul than people who've been performing professionally for decades. That's Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor. I studied it for 2 years and couldn't play it half this well. Someone get this woman a record deal. Is that seriously just some random diner? With that kind of talent, she should be at Carnegie Hall." Lily handed the phone back, her hand trembling slightly. "So I'm internet famous for a day, great. Tomorrow they'll move on to a cat video or something." Alex shook his head. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just going viral in a meaningless way. People who matter in the music world are seeing this. I've already gotten calls from 3 friends who work in the industry asking about you." Lily felt her throat tighten. "I have a life here. A job. Responsibilities." "That's exactly why I waited to talk to you," Alex said, his voice softer now. "I didn't want to corner you inside with everyone watching, but I also couldn't just let you walk away without saying anything." He hesitated, then continued. "Look, I made my fortune by recognizing potential, seeing something valuable before everyone else did. What you can do, it's rare, special, and I think you know that." Lily looked away, uncomfortable with his intensity. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to help you. No strings attached." "Right," Lily scoffed. "Because rich guys always offer to help waitresses out of the goodness of their hearts." To her surprise, Alex laughed. "Fair point. But I'm not hitting on you if that's what you're worried about. I have a girlfriend who would kill me, for one thing. And for another, this is purely about the music." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking less sure of himself. "My mom was a concert pianist. Not famous or anything, but good. Really good. She gave it all up to raise me and my sisters after our dad left. She never complained, but sometimes I'd catch her watching performances on TV with this look on her face." He trailed off, lost in the memory for a moment. "Anyway, seeing you play today reminded me of her. She passed away last year, and I don't know, maybe this is my way of honoring her somehow." The personal story caught Lily off guard. It wasn't what she'd expected from him. "I'm sorry about your mom," she said quietly. "Yeah." Alex shrugged, visibly pulling himself together. "The point is, I have connections and resources that could help you. Maybe not to become a famous concert pianist overnight, but at least to explore the possibilities. See if there's a way to balance your responsibilities with your talent." Lily glanced at her watch. Her brother would be wondering where she was. "I really do need to get home." "Of course," Alex said quickly. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "Just think about it, okay? Call me if you want to talk more. No pressure." She tucked the card into her pocket, not making any promises, and turned to leave. "Lily," Alex called after her, making her pause. For what it's worth, I think your brother would be proud to see you play like that. The words followed her all the way home, echoing in her mind as she walked the 6 blocks to the small apartment she shared with her brother. By the time she unlocked the door, she had almost convinced herself to forget the whole thing, to go back to her normal life and pretend today had never happened. There you are. Her brother called from the couch as she entered. I was starting to worry. Tommy was 16 now, tall and gangly with their father's eyes and their mother's smile. His health problems had stabilized over the past year, which was a blessing, but he still needed regular checkups and medication that insurance only partially covered. Sorry I'm late, Lily said, dropping her bag by the door. It was a weird day at work. Weird how? Tommy asked, muting the TV show he'd been watching. Before Lily could answer, Tommy's phone buzzed. He glanced down at it, then did a dramatic double take. Holy crap, Lily! Is this you? He turned the phone around to show her the same video she'd seen on Alex's phone. Her heart sank. Of course it would find its way to Tommy eventually. The universe wasn't going to let her off that easily. Where did you get that? She asked, though she already knew the answer. It's everywhere. Ben sent it to me asking if that was my sister. I thought he was confused at first because, you don't play anymore. Tommy's eyes were wide with excitement. But it is you. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me you were playing again? Lily sank onto the couch beside him, suddenly exhausted. It just happened today. Some rich guy came into the diner and basically dared me to play the old keyboard. I don't know why I did it. Tommy studied the video again, his expression softening. You look happy, he said quietly. When you're playing, I haven't seen you look like that in a long time. The simple observation hit Lily like a physical blow. She hadn't realized how much she'd been hiding, not just from the world, but from herself. I guess I was, she admitted, for a few minutes at least. Tommy put down his phone and turned to face her fully. You know I feel bad about it, right? That you had to quit school because of me? Tommy, no, Lily said firmly, grabbing his hand. That was never your fault. It was just life, bad luck, bad timing. Still, he insisted, if it weren't for me, you'd still be playing. You'd probably be famous by now. Lily shook her head, squeezing his hand tighter. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have had a reason to keep going after Mom and Dad died. You're not my burden, Tommy, you're my anchor. He smiled at that, but then his expression grew serious again. But what if you could do both? Take care of me and play again? Lily's conversation with Alex flashed through her mind. It's not that simple. Why not? I'm not a little kid anymore. I can take care of myself most of the time. Tommy gestured to the kitchen where dinner dishes were already washed and put away. I even made dinner today. Mac and cheese from a box doesn't count as cooking, Lily teased, grateful for the moment of lightness. It does if you add hot dogs, Tommy shot back with a grin. Then more seriously, I mean it, Lily. If there's a chance for you to play again, really play, not just on some crappy keyboard at the diner, you should take it. Lily stared at her brother, seeing him suddenly as the young man he was becoming rather than the boy she'd needed to protect. When had that happened? When had she stopped seeing how he was growing and changing? There might be something, she said hesitantly, pulling Alex's business card from her pocket. The guy who challenged me to play, he has connections in the music industry. He offered to help, and Tommy prompted when she didn't continue. And I told him I needed to get home to you. Tommy rolled his eyes dramatically. So you blew him off, Lily? I didn't blow him off, she protested. I don't know. It seems too good to be true. People don't just swoop in and solve your problems in real life. Maybe not usually, Tommy agreed. But your video has like 1 million views already. That's not nothing. Lily blinked in surprise. 1 million? Tommy nodded, scrolling through his phone. It's all over the place. People are going crazy trying to find out who you are. He paused, looking up at her with a mix of pride and wonder. My sister, the internet sensation. Despite herself, Lily laughed. The whole situation was so absurd that it had circled all the way around to being funny. So you're going to call him right? Tommy asked. The rich guy? Lily looked down at the business card in her hand. Alexander Reed, CEO, with a phone number embossed in sleek silver letters. A door to another life, or maybe a way to reclaim a piece of the life she'd lost. I don't know, she said truthfully. It's a lot to think about. Tommy nudged her shoulder. Well, while you're thinking, can we watch the video again? I want to see if the comments mention your incredibly handsome and talented brother. Lily laughed and shoved him playfully. "You're impossible. And you're amazing," he said, suddenly serious again. "You always have been, Lily, not just when you're playing piano." His words warmed something inside her that had been cold for a very long time. Whatever happened next, whether she called Alex or not, whether this viral moment led anywhere or faded away, she had this. A brother who loved her, a life they'd built together out of tragedy. Maybe that was enough, or maybe, just maybe, there could be more. Lily didn't call Alex the next day, or the day after that. Instead, she tucked his business card into her dresser drawer and tried to go back to her normal life. But normal had other plans. When she arrived at the diner for her morning shift, there was a line of people outside the door, not the usual breakfast crowd, but strangers with phones in hand, waiting to see the piano waitress. Her boss greeted her with a huge grin and a new name tag that read, Lily Chen, piano prodigy, in bold letters. "I'm not wearing that," she said flatly, pushing past him to get her regular name tag from the hook. "Come on, Lily. We've had more reservations in the last day than we usually get in a month. People are coming from 2 towns over just to eat here now." "That's great for you," Lily said, tying her apron with more force than necessary. "But I'm not a circus act." Her boss's smile faltered. "I was thinking maybe you could play a little something during the lunch rush. Just for a few minutes. I'll add a bonus to your paycheck." Lily felt a flare of anger. "I'm a waitress, not an entertainer. If you want a pianist, hire one." She turned away before he could argue further and started her shift, doing her best to ignore the whispers and stares that followed her around the diner. When customers asked her to play, she politely declined. When they tried to film her serving food, she stepped out of frame. By the end of her shift, she was exhausted from the constant attention. As she was gathering her things to leave, her boss approached again, his expression more serious. "Lily, we need to talk," he said. "I know you're not comfortable with all this attention, but it's good for business. Really good. And if you won't play during your shift..." He hesitated, then finished in a rush. "I'm going to have to cut your hours. I've got 3 people willing to work full-time who can also play that keyboard." The unfairness of it hit Lily like a slap. "You'd punish me for not performing on command? After 3 years of working doubles and covering shifts when no one else would?" Her boss had the grace to look ashamed, but he stood his ground. "It's not personal, it's business. I've got to think about what's best for the diner." Lily untied her apron and handed it to him. "Then I quit." She walked out before he could respond, anger and hurt propelling her forward. She made it halfway down the block before reality caught up with her. She had just quit her job, the job that paid their rent, bought Tommy's medicine, put food on their table. What was she thinking? Panic clawed at her chest. She needed to go back, apologize, beg for her job back if necessary. They couldn't afford for her to have pride right now. But as she turned to head back to the diner, her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered anyway, desperate for any distraction from what she'd just done. "Hello? Lily, it's Alex Reed. I hope it's okay that I called. One of the waitresses at the diner gave me your number when I stopped by looking for you." Lily closed her eyes, torn between relief and irritation. "It's fine. What do you want?" "I heard about what happened at the diner," Alex said, his voice concerned. "Are you okay?" "News travels fast," Lily muttered. "I'm fine. Just figuring out my next move. That's actually why I'm calling. I have a proposition for you if you're willing to hear me out." Lily sighed, too tired to play games. "Look, Alex, I appreciate the interest in my musical career or whatever, but right now I need a job that pays actual money for actual bills. So unless you're offering..." $10,000, Alex interrupted. "To play one private concert at my home this weekend." Lily nearly dropped her phone. "What? $10,000, Alex repeated calmly. "For one night, 2 hours max. You choose the program. My company is hosting an event for some potential investors, and I want something special to impress them. Something they can't see anywhere else." "You're serious?" Lily asked, still struggling to process his offer. "Completely. You'd be doing me a favor, honestly. These people see world-class entertainment all the time. But you're authentic, undiscovered. Exactly the kind of unique experience they're looking for." Lily's mind raced. $10,000 was more than she made in 4 months at the diner. It would cover rent, bills, and Tommy's medications, with enough left over to give them some breathing room for once. "I don't even have anything to wear to a fancy party," she said weakly, her last defense crumbling. Alex chuckled. That's easily solved. What do you say? 1 night, 2 hours, $10,000? Lily thought of Tommy, of his encouraging words the night before. I say you have a pianist for your party. 2 days later, Lily found herself standing in front of the largest house she had ever seen in person. Alex's home was a modern mansion on the outskirts of town, all glass and sleek angles perched on a hillside overlooking the valley. A valet took her car, a 15-year-old Honda that looked painfully out of place among the luxury vehicles lining the circular driveway. Inside, she was greeted by a woman in a black dress who introduced herself as Alex's assistant and led her through the sprawling house to a room where a gleaming grand piano waited, its lid raised like a black wing. Mr. Reed asked that you have some time to familiarize yourself with the instrument before the guests arrive, the assistant explained. There's a dress in the adjoining room for you. Mr. Reed's girlfriend helped select it, so I hope it meets with your approval. The assistant left, and Lily stood alone with the piano, a Steinway concert grand that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. With trembling fingers, she reached out to touch the keys. The first note sang through the room with such pure, perfect tone that tears sprang to Lily's eyes. It had been so long since she'd played on a real piano, let alone one of this caliber. She sank onto the bench and began to play scales, just to feel the action of the keys, the response of the hammers, the resonance of the strings. It was like coming home. She lost track of time as she played, warming up with familiar exercises before moving on to pieces she had once known by heart. Her fingers remembered more than she expected, muscle memory taking over where conscious recollection failed. By the time Alex appeared in the doorway, she was deep into a Bach prelude, eyes closed, swaying slightly with the rhythm. He waited until she finished before speaking. That was beautiful. Lily jumped slightly, startled from her musical trance. I didn't hear you come in. I didn't want to interrupt. Alex stepped into the room, dressed in a tuxedo that made him look more like a movie star than a tech entrepreneur. How does it feel? The piano? It's incredible, Lily admitted. I've never played anything like it. Alex smiled, pleased by her reaction. It was my mother's. She would have loved to hear you play it. The personal connection surprised Lily again. Maybe there was more to Alex than she had initially thought. I should probably get ready, she said, glancing toward the adjoining room where the dress waited. Of course. The guests will be arriving in about an hour. Take your time. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Lily? Thank you for doing this. It means a lot. The dress waiting for her was a deep midnight blue, simple but elegant, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that moved when she walked. It fit perfectly, as did the silver heels beside it. Lily stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman who looked back at her. With her hair swept up in the beautiful dress, she looked like someone who belonged at a fancy party in a hillside mansion. Someone who played Steinway grand pianos for a living instead of serving pancakes. Well, this is different, she murmured to herself, smoothing the fabric nervously. By the time she returned to the main room, guests had begun to arrive. She could hear the murmur of conversation and the clink of glasses from the adjacent great room. Alex appeared, offering her a glass of water and a reassuring smile. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, Lily admitted. It's been a while since I performed for people who were actually paying attention. You'll be amazing, Alex said with such confidence that Lily almost believed him. I'll introduce you in about 10 minutes. The piano has been moved to the center of the great room, so everyone will be able to see and hear you. True to his word, 10 minutes later, Alex clinked a spoon against his glass, calling for attention from the gathered crowd. About 50 people dressed in formal attire, their combined net worth probably equal to the GDP of a small country. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex began, his voice carrying easily across the room. Thank you all for coming tonight. As you know, at Reed Technologies, we pride ourselves on recognizing untapped potential, whether in coding, design, or... He paused for effect. Musical genius. He gestured toward Lily, who stepped forward, heart hammering in her chest. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to an extraordinary talent I discovered quite by accident. Until very recently, she was serving coffee at a local diner. Tonight, she'll be demonstrating what happens when true artistry meets opportunity. Please welcome Lily Chen. The crowd applauded politely as Lily made her way to the piano. As she settled onto the bench, adjusting her dress around her, she caught sight of a familiar face at the back of the room. Tommy, dressed in a borrowed suit, grinning at her with undisguised pride. Alex must have arranged for him to be there as a surprise. The sight of her brother gave Lily courage. She took a deep breath, placed her hands on the keys, and began to play. She had chosen a program that showcased range and emotion rather than just technical skill. A Chopin nocturne to begin, followed by a spirited Mozart sonata, then the Rachmaninoff prelude that had started this whole journey. As she played, the room faded away, leaving only the music, the piano, and the joy she had denied herself for too long. When she finished the final piece, there was a moment of complete silence before the room erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, clapping enthusiastically, some wiping away tears. As Lily stood to acknowledge them with a small bow, she caught Alex's eye. He was beaming, not with the satisfaction of someone whose investment had paid off, but with genuine happiness for her success. After the applause finally died down, people swarmed around her, asking questions, offering compliments, and most surprisingly, business cards. A woman who introduced herself as the director of the City Symphony invited Lily to audition for an upcoming concert series. A silver-haired man who owned a record label wanted to discuss potential opportunities. A university professor offered her a chance to complete her degree with a full scholarship. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, terrifying. Through it all, Lily kept looking for Tommy, finding reassurance in his proud smile as he watched from the sidelines. Later, when most of the guests had left, Lily found herself sitting with Alex and Tommy on the terrace overlooking the twinkling lights of the valley below. "So," Alex said, handing her an envelope, "your payment as promised." Lily took the envelope, still not quite believing this was real. "Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me," Alex said seriously. "This was all you, Lily. I just provided the stage." Tommy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet all evening, finally spoke up. "What happens now?" It was the question Lily had been avoiding, even as possibilities swirled around her like autumn leaves in the wind. What did happen now? Did she try to build a new life from this unexpected opportunity? Did she dare to dream again after so carefully putting those dreams away? Looking between her brother and Alex, Lily realized she didn't have to decide everything tonight. For the first time in 3 years, she had options, and the freedom to explore them at her own pace. "Now," she said, a smile spreading slowly across her face, "we see what's possible." 6 months later, Lily stood in the wings of the city concert hall, her heart pounding as she listened to the orchestra warming up. The familiar sounds, violins testing their strings, the oboe offering an A for tuning, the gentle tapping of the timpani, brought back memories of her years at music school. But tonight was different. Tonight she wasn't a student. She was the featured soloist. 5 minutes. "Ms. Chen," the stage manager whispered, giving her a reassuring smile. Lily nodded, smoothing the skirt of her gown, a deep emerald green that caught the light as she moved. In the front row of the audience, Tommy would be sitting next to Alex and his girlfriend, all of them dressed in their finest to support her debut with the City Symphony. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. After the performance at Alex's home, opportunities had appeared like spring flowers after a long winter. She had accepted the symphony's invitation to audition and earned a spot as a guest soloist for their summer concert series. The university had arranged a special program that allowed her to complete her degree while performing, with classes scheduled around her rehearsals and practice time. Most importantly, Tommy was thriving. The money from the private concert had given them breathing room, and Lily's new position with the symphony provided steady income and health insurance that covered his medical needs. They had moved to a better apartment closer to Tommy's school, where he had joined the jazz band and discovered his own musical talents on the saxophone. A week after Alex's party, Lily had returned to the diner, not as an employee but as a customer. Her former boss had been shocked to see her, even more so when she ordered coffee and left a generous tip along with tickets to her first public performance. It wasn't about rubbing her success in his face. It was about closing that chapter of her life with grace. The woman who had played Rachmaninoff on a dusty keyboard in a small-town diner still lived inside her, but now she had room to grow, to breathe, to become something more. And it had all started with a challenge from a stranger who saw something in her that she had forgotten was there. The concert hall lights dimmed, and the audience fell silent as the conductor walked onto the stage. The polite applause washed over Lily like a gentle wave as she took a deep breath, centering herself. "Ladies and gentlemen," the conductor announced, "it is my great pleasure to present our soloist for this evening's performance of Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1. Please welcome Lily Chen." The applause grew louder as Lily stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinding her. She made her way to the gleaming concert grand piano at the center of the stage, her steps measured and confident. As she took her seat, adjusting the bench just so, she caught sight of Tommy in the front row, giving her a subtle thumbs up. Beside him, Alex nodded encouragingly, his expression full of quiet pride. The conductor raised his baton and the orchestra began the famous opening chords of the concerto. Lily's hands hovered over the keys, waiting for her entrance. In that suspended moment between silence and sound, she thought of the journey that had brought her here, the loss, the struggle, the unexpected second chance. Then it was time. Her fingers struck the keys with passion and precision, the powerful chords filling the concert hall. As she played, the music flowed through her like a river, carrying away the doubts and fears that had held her back for so long. This connection between artist, instrument, and audience, this was what she had been missing. This was home. The first movement ended with thunderous applause, the audience already on their feet before she had even completed the concerto. Lily allowed herself a small smile as she prepared for the lyrical second movement, her heart full to bursting. By the time the final triumphant notes of the third movement echoed through the hall, Lily knew she had given everything she had to the performance. The audience erupted in a standing ovation, their appreciation washing over her in waves. She rose from the piano bench, legs slightly shaky with emotion and adrenaline, and bowed deeply. As she straightened, her eyes found Tommy, who was clapping wildly, his face shining with tears and pride. Next to him, Alex was beaming, nudging the elegant woman beside him and saying something that made her laugh and nod in agreement. After 3 curtain calls, Lily finally made her way backstage where a small crowd of well-wishers had gathered. She accepted their congratulations with genuine gratitude, still floating on the high of the performance. Eventually, she spotted Tommy pushing through the crowd, followed by Alex and his girlfriend. "Lily," Tommy called, rushing up to hug her tightly. At 16, he was nearly as tall as she was now, and the borrowed suit he'd worn to Alex's party had been replaced by one that fit him properly. "You were incredible." Everyone was crying during that second movement. Even that grumpy old guy who sits on our building stoop was wiping his eyes. Lily laughed, hugging him back just as tightly. "Mr. Wilson came? I didn't think he ever left that stoop. I may have bribed him with good seats and the promise of introducing him to the famous pianist, who used to bring him coffee sometimes," Tommy admitted with a grin. Alex approached next, offering Lily a bouquet of white lilies. "That was something special tonight," he said sincerely. "My mother would have been the first one on her feet." "Thank you," Lily said, accepting the flowers with a smile. "For these and for everything else." Alex's girlfriend, a warm, practical woman named Beth who worked as a pediatric surgeon, gave Lily a quick hug.
"He hasn't stopped talking about you for months," she said with a fond eye roll.
The millionaire who discovered the piano prodigy. I think his head might actually explode from pride. "It was a joint discovery," Alex protested good-naturedly. "I just issued the challenge." Lily did all the hard work. A photographer approached asking for a photo of Lily with the conductor. As she stepped away, she overheard Tommy talking excitedly with Alex about the music scholarship program they had started together, a foundation to help talented young musicians who might otherwise have to give up their dreams due to financial hardship. The program had already awarded its first round of scholarships, with Tommy serving on the student advisory board. Later that night, after the reception and the interviews with local press, Lily and Tommy returned to their apartment. Tommy immediately flopped onto the couch, loosening his tie with a dramatic sigh. "I don't know how you're still standing," he said, watching as Lily carefully hung her concert gown in the closet. "Aren't you exhausted?" "Oddly, no," Lily admitted. "I feel like I could play that concert all over again right now." She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Their new apartment wasn't fancy, but it had big windows and, most importantly, space for the upright piano Alex had helped them find. a housewarming gift from the symphony board after she signed her contract. Do you ever think about how crazy this all is? Tommy asked, joining her at the window. 6 months ago, you were serving pancakes and worried about making rent. Now you're, he gestured vaguely, you know, this whole other person. Lily smiled, putting an arm around her brother's shoulders. Not a whole other person. Just me, but with the volume turned up. I like the volume turned up, Tommy said, leaning his head against hers briefly. You smile more. I have more reasons to smile now, Lily replied softly. Tommy yawned widely, the excitement of the evening finally catching up to him. I'm going to bed. Some of us have school tomorrow, unlike certain famous pianists who get to sleep in. Lily laughed. I have a 9 a.m. rehearsal for next week's concert, thank you very much. After Tommy had gone to his room, Lily sat down at her piano, not to play, but just to feel the keys beneath her fingers. She thought about the dusty keyboard at the diner that had started it all, and smiled at the memory that no longer held any bitterness. Her phone buzzed with a message from Alex. Dinner next week to discuss expanding the scholarship program? Beth has some contacts at the Children's Hospital who know families that could use our help. Lily sent back a quick count me in before setting the phone aside and turning her attention back to the piano. She began to play softly, mindful of the hour but unable to contain the music that still flowed through her. It wasn't Tchaikovsky or Rachmaninoff this time, but something new, her own composition still taking shape, still becoming like her. The next morning, Lily was awoken by Tommy shaking her shoulder excitedly. Lily, wake up! You're not going to believe this. She blinked sleepily, trying to focus on the phone he was waving in front of her face. What time is it? Never mind that, look. Tommy thrust the phone into her hands. On the screen was an email from one of the world's most prestigious music festivals, inviting Lily to perform as a featured artist in their upcoming season. The festival was held annually in Vienna, Austria, the city of Mozart and Beethoven, the beating heart of classical music. They want me to play in Vienna? Lily whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Tommy nodded vigorously. And look at the date, it's during my spring break. We could go together. Lily scrolled through the email, her heart racing. It was real. An all-expenses-paid trip to Vienna, to play in concert halls where the greatest musicians in history had performed. The thought of Tommy experiencing that with her, of showing him the world beyond their small town, brought tears to her eyes. We're going to need passports, she said, finally looking up with a smile that could have lit the room. Tommy whooped with joy, doing a little victory dance that made Lily laugh through her tears. In that moment, watching her brother celebrate her success as if it were his own, Lily felt a sense of completion. The circle that had begun with loss and sacrifice had transformed into something beautiful, not just for her, but for Tommy, too. Later that day, Lily stopped by the Blue Creek Diner on her way to rehearsal. The place was busier than she remembered, with a line of customers waiting for tables. A sign in the window caught her eye. Home of the piano waitress, live music every Friday night. She smiled to herself as she continued past, her old life and her new one existing side by side, neither canceling out the other. The struggling waitress who had supported her brother through hard times was as much a part of her story as the acclaimed pianist who had played Tchaikovsky to a standing ovation. That evening, as she sat at her piano working on her composition, Lily thought about the strange twists of fate that had led her here. A Millionaire's challenge, a dusty keyboard, a viral video, small moments that had changed everything, but mostly, she thought about the moment of decision, that split second when she could have walked away from the keyboard at the diner, but chose instead to sit down and play. To open the door she had closed 3 years earlier and step through it, not knowing where it might lead. As her fingers found the final chord of her composition, bringing it to a resolute, hopeful conclusion, Lily knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. Not just for herself, but for Tommy, for Alex, and for all the young musicians who would benefit from their shared vision of making music accessible to everyone with the talent and passion to pursue it. The waitress, who had once been challenged to play a keyboard, had found her voice again, and in doing so, had helped others find theirs too.